Have you ever felt invisible in your own life? Have you ever walked through the rooms of a home you helped build, next to a person who vowed to see you forever and felt like a ghost? This is a story about that feeling. It's a story about what happens when the quiet, unseen foundation of a life suddenly finds its voice, not in a scream, but in the chilling silence of a truth that can no longer be ignored. Clara lived in a beautiful house filled with beautiful things, but she had long forgotten what it felt like to be one of them. Her husband, Mark, was a man who painted their life in broad, successful strokes, a big job, a perfect smile, a reputation as solid as the oak door of their home. But for Clara, the details had begun to blur. Her own colors had faded into the beige walls, her own ambitions packed away in boxes in the attic, labeled someday. She moved through their life as a caretaker of its image, the silent partner in the enterprise of Mark and Clara. She was the one who remembered birthdays, arranged the dry cleaning, and kept the pantry stocked. She was a manager of logistics, a curator of comfort, but she had ceased to be a subject in the portrait. Her role was essential but unseen, like the plumbing in the walls or the code that runs a website. It worked, so no one ever thought to look at it. On a Tuesday afternoon, under the hum of a refrigerator that was emptier than it should be, Clara sat down with Mark's laptop. It was a simple, domestic task. Order groceries. Her own laptop was upstairs, but his was right there on the kitchen island, sleek and silver, left open as if in offering. It was a sign of their trust, or so she thought. A small, everyday intimacy. She clicked open the browser, a list of their usuals already in her mind. Organic milk, sourdough bread, the specific brand of coffee he liked. But her fingers slipped on the trackpad. A stray movement, a twitch of fate. The cursor slid away from the browser icon and hovered over a folder on the desktop. It was innocently named Projects. She had seen it 100 times and thought nothing of it. But this time, another folder was nestled inside it, one she had never seen before. Its name was a single, stark word that made the air in her lungs turn to ice. Julian. The name meant nothing to her. It was a blank slate, a stranger's name in the intimate digital space she shared with her husband. Curiosity, a feeling she hadn't felt in years, pricked at her. It wasn't suspicion, not yet. It was a dull, gray curiosity. Maybe it was a work thing, a new client Mark had forgotten to mention. She clicked. Inside, there was only one item. A folder. This one was not named with a word, but with a date. A date 6 months from now. October 12th, cold began to creep up her spine, a silent alarm ringing in the marrow of her bones. Her heart started a low, heavy drumbeat against her ribs. This was no longer curiosity. This was dread. She clicked again. The screen filled with images. Not spreadsheets or project plans. They were photographs. Mark, her Mark, smiling a smile she hadn't seen directed at her in years. It was a brilliant, unburdened smile, his head tilted back in laughter, his arm wrapped tightly around another man. The man, presumably Julian, was handsome, with kind eyes and a laugh that seemed to echo from the still image. They were on a beach, the sun setting behind them in a blaze of orange and purple. They were in a small, rustic cabin, a fireplace crackling behind them. They were at a formal dinner, clinking champagne glasses, their eyes locked on each other. And then Clara saw it. On Julian's left hand, in a photo taken just last month, was a ring. An engagement ring. A wave of nausea washed over her, so intense she had to grip the sides of the granite island to keep from falling. Her breath came in ragged, shallow gasps. She clicked out of the photos, her hand trembling violently. There were other files. Documents. A PDF from a wedding venue, the Willows Estate, with a contract confirming the booking for October 12th. The names on the contract were Mark Davison and Julian Croft. There was a catering invoice, detailing a menu for 100 guests. A playlist titled, Our Walk Down the Aisle, and then, the worst of it. An email chain between Mark and a jeweler. The subject line, the wedding bands he described the custom design, 2 interlocking rings, one in white gold, one in yellow gold, to symbolize their 2 worlds coming together. He wrote about his love for Julian with a poetry and passion she thought he was incapable of. "He is the missing piece of my soul," Mark had written. "This union is not just a ceremony. It is the homecoming I have waited for my entire life." The groceries were forgotten. The house was no longer a home. It was a stage, and she had just discovered her entire performance was a lie. Clara closed the laptop with a quiet click that sounded like a gunshot in the silent kitchen. The sleek, silver rectangle now felt like a bomb, ticking silently on the granite island. She stood there for a long time, her hand resting on its cold surface, her reflection warped and distant in the metallic sheen. She felt nothing and everything all at once. A hollow ache had opened up in her chest, a vast, empty space where the architecture of her marriage had once stood. She didn't cry. The shock was too sharp, too crystalline for tears. It was a shard of ice lodged deep in her heart. She walked through the house, touching the furniture, the picture frames, the life they had built. It all felt like a museum exhibit now. Relics of a shared history that was, it turned out, not shared at all. She saw a photo on the mantelpiece, the two of them on their own wedding day, 15 years ago. Mark was smiling, but she saw it now. The smile didn't reach his eyes. It was a performance. Had it always been a performance? The small slights, the forgotten anniversaries, the emotional distance she had excused as stress from his demanding job, they all clicked into place, forming a constellation of deceit. He wasn't just distant, he was living in another galaxy entirely. Hours later, she heard his key in the lock. Her body went rigid. She schooled her face into a mask of neutrality, a skill she had perfected over years of managing his moods. He walked in, dropping his briefcase by the door with a heavy sigh. "Tough day," he announced, loosening his tie. He walked over and kissed her cheek, a dry, perfunctory gesture. It felt like the touch of a stranger. "What's for dinner?" he asked, already heading for the refrigerator. "Did you get the groceries?" The mundane question struck her with the force of a physical blow. Groceries. He was talking about groceries while the wreckage of their life lay on the kitchen island between them. "I didn't get to it," she said, her voice unnervingly calm. "I got sidetracked." He didn't notice. He never noticed. "No worries, we can order in," he said, pulling out his phone. "Pizza?" He looked at her, but he didn't see her. He saw the wife, the fixture, the comfortable background of his life. He did not see the woman whose world had been pulverized just hours before, on his laptop, in his kitchen. And in that moment, as he casually scrolled through pizza toppings, Clara felt a new emotion begin to stir beneath the ice of her shock. It was not anger, not yet. It was a quiet, cold resolve. He had made her invisible. Now, she would use that invisibility. She would watch, she would learn, and she would understand the full scope of this life he had hidden from her. The ghost was about to start haunting. The next morning, Clara did something she hadn't done in a decade. She made a decision entirely for herself. After Mark left for work, humming a tune she now recognized from the Walk Down the Aisle playlist, she found a name online. Dr. Eris Evans, a therapist specializing in marital crises and personal transformation. The title felt fitting. She booked an appointment for the following day, using a prepaid credit card she kept for emergencies. This, she decided, was the definition of an emergency. Walking into Dr. Evans' office felt like stepping into another world. It was quiet and calm, decorated in soft blues and grays, a stark contrast to the loud, chaotic monologue screaming in her head. Dr. Evans was a woman in her late 50s, with intelligent eyes that seemed to see more than Clara was showing. She was a perceptive authority, her presence radiating a calm confidence that was immediately disarming. Clara sat on the plush sofa, her hands clenched in her lap. She hadn't planned what to say. She had intended to tell the whole story, to let the poison out. But when Dr. Evans asked her gently, "So, what brings you here today, Clara?" the words caught in her throat. The betrayal felt too monstrous to speak aloud. To say it would be to make it irrevocably real. So she skirted the edges of it. "We've been having problems," she began, her voice small. "There's a distance between us. I feel disconnected. Like he's not really there." She spoke of the loneliness, the feeling of being overlooked, the quiet erosion of their intimacy. She painted a picture of a marriage slowly dying of neglect, a common and tragic story. She did not mention Julian. She did not mention the wedding folder. She was testing the waters, testing herself. Dr. Evans listened patiently, her gaze unwavering. She didn't interrupt. She let the silence hang in the air when Clara trailed off, giving her space. When Clara was finished, the doctor leaned forward slightly. "Clara," she said, her voice both gentle and firm. "Everything you're describing points to a significant breakdown in the partnership. But I get the sense that you are not here because of a slow decay. You're here because of an earthquake. You are speaking of tremors, but your eyes are telling me the ground has already split wide open." Clara's composure fractured. A single tear escaped and traced a hot path down her cheek. Dr. Evans saw it. She saw through the carefully constructed story to the raw wound beneath. "You don't have to tell me everything today," the doctor continued softly. "But you must know that you are not just a passive observer in your life. The strength it took for you to walk in here today is immense. Whatever the earthquake was, you have survived the first shock. Now, we need to find out if the foundation is worth rebuilding, or if it's time to find safer ground." The session ended with that question hanging in the air. Clara left not with answers, but with a profound and unsettling realization. For the first time in years, someone had truly seen her. And in being seen, she felt the first flicker of her own power returning. Mark moved through his days with the seamless confidence of a man who believed his worlds were perfectly compartmentalized. He was the cynical gatekeeper of his own life, guarding a secret he was certain was secure. His underestimation of Clara was not born of malice, but of a profound, patronizing arrogance. He loved her in his own way. He loved the stability she represented, the comfortable, predictable rhythm of their life. She was the anchor that allowed his other ship to sail. He saw her not as a dynamic, intelligent partner, but as a permanent, unchanging part of the landscape. Fragile. Content. Uncurious. He believed he was protecting her from a truth she couldn't handle, a kindness that was, in reality, the deepest form of cruelty. That afternoon, he sat in his car during his lunch break, the windows rolled up, and called Julian. His voice, which was so often clipped and professional at work or calmly noncommittal at home, transformed. It became warm, vibrant, and full of genuine affection. "Hey, you," he said, a smile spreading across his face. "I was just thinking about the tasting menu for the reception. Did you see the chef's email?" The sea bass sounds incredible. Julian's voice, muffled through the phone, was a cheerful counterpoint. They spoke for 20 minutes about flowers, about seating charts, about Julian's cousin who needed a gluten-free option. It was the mundane, joyful chatter of a couple planning their future. To Mark, this was not a betrayal. It was a different reality, one he felt he was entitled to. He had convinced himself that his life with Clara and his life with Julian could coexist, two parallel lines that would never intersect. "How are things at home?" Julian asked, a hint of concern in his voice. It was a question they rarely discussed. "Everything's fine," Mark said quickly, the wall of compartmentalization snapping firmly back into place. She's fine. It's stable. She doesn't suspect a thing. It's better this way. It would destroy her." That was the cornerstone of his self-deception, that he was sparing her pain. He saw her as a delicate doll that would shatter if exposed to the complexities of his real emotions. He failed to understand that she was not made of glass. He had forgotten, or perhaps never known, that she was forged from something far stronger. While he spoke on the phone, he scrolled through his photo gallery, landing on a picture of him and Julian from their trip to the coast. He looked so happy. He sent the photo to the wedding planner with the caption, a reminder of what this is all about. He was building a new life based on a foundation of lies, completely unaware that the woman he had relegated to the role of caretaker was already beginning to dismantle the old one, brick by silent brick. His skepticism about her perception was his greatest weakness, the fatal flaw in his carefully constructed deception. The second session with Dr. Evans was a deluge. Clara walked in, sat down on the same sofa, But this time she did not wait to be asked. The dam of her composure broke, and the story of the past week poured out of her in a torrent of pain, disbelief, and chilling detail. She spoke of the laptop, the folder, the name Julian. She described the photographs, the smiles that felt like daggers, the venue contract, the wedding bands. She recited the line from Mark's email, "The homecoming I have waited for my entire life," and her voice finally cracked, the sound of a spirit splintering. She wept. Not quiet, dignified tears, but deep, gut-wrenching sobs that shook her entire body. It was the grief for her 15-year marriage, for the man she thought she knew, for the woman she used to be. Dr. Evans did not rush to comfort her with platitudes. She let the storm rage. She passed a box of tissues and simply bore witness, her presence a quiet, solid anchor in the turbulent sea of Clara's sorrow. Her role as the catalyst was solidifying. She was no longer just a therapist. She was becoming an advocate for the woman sitting in front of her. When the sobs finally subsided into shuddering breaths, Dr. Evans leaned forward. Her expression was not one of pity, but of profound respect. "Thank you for trusting me with that, Clara," she said, her voice a low, steady balm. "What you have discovered is a profound betrayal. It is a violation on every level. Allow yourself to feel the full weight of that. Do not minimize it. Do not excuse it." Then, her tone shifted. It became sharper, more focused. She was moving Clara from the "what happened" to the "what now." "He has made a choice," Dr. Evans said, her eyes locking with Clara's. "He has built an entire world without you. The Mark you thought you knew does not exist. He is a fiction. The pain you are feeling is real, but it is for a ghost." Clara wiped her eyes, a flicker of something new, anger, igniting in her chest. "He thought I was stupid," she whispered. "He thought I would never find out." Dr. Evans nodded. "He underestimated you. That is his mistake, not your failing. People who build lives on lies depend on the people they are deceiving to remain passive, to remain blind. But you are not blind, Clara. Your eyes are wide open now. So the question is no longer about him. It is about you. This is not the end of your story. This is the violent, painful, and necessary beginning of your next chapter. The question is, who do you want to be when you turn that page?" The words landed with incredible force. They were not just therapeutic jargon. They were a call to arms. The catalyst had activated the protagonist. Clara left that office not just as a victim of deceit, but as the architect of her own impending liberation. In the days that followed, a remarkable transformation took place within Clara. The grief, while still present, receded into the background, replaced by a crystalline, focused clarity. She was no longer a ghost haunting her own home. She was an operative on a mission. Her overlooked virtue, the quiet, meticulous attention to detail she had applied to running their household for years, was now repurposed into a powerful tool. She became an investigator of her own life, her purpose not to seek revenge, but to uncover the full, unvarnished truth. She needed to see the entire iceberg, not just the treacherous tip she had stumbled upon. She began to move with a quiet, deliberate purpose. She bought a new, encrypted hard drive. During the day, while Mark was at work, she methodically went through his laptop, his home office, his financial statements. The woman who used to struggle to remember the password for their streaming service now navigated firewalls and password-protected files with grim determination. She found more. So much more. There was a separate bank account, opened 3 years ago. Into this account, a portion of Mark's salary was diverted every month. It was the Julian Fund. From this account, he paid for flights to romantic getaways, for expensive dinners she had never been invited to, for the down payment on the wedding venue. He had been funding his secret life with their shared resources. The discovery didn't bring more pain, only more resolve. It was data. Evidence. It stripped away any lingering sentimentality she might have had. This wasn't a man who had fallen in love with someone else. This was a man who had systematically defrauded her, emotionally and financially. He hadn't just broken her heart, he had stolen from their future. She found a storage unit rental agreement. The unit was across town. One afternoon, fueled by a cold fury, she drove there. She didn't know if she could get in, but she tried the most obvious code, Julian's birthday, which she had found on a flight itinerary. The lock clicked open. Inside, it was a shrine to his other life. There were clothes, books, furniture. A framed photo of Mark and Julian on a ski lift. There was even a box of kitchen supplies, as if they were slowly building a home in secret. It was a tangible, physical manifestation of his deception. She took pictures of everything, her hands steady, her heart beating a slow, determined rhythm. Each photo was another brick in the wall she was building around her own heart, a fortress of truth to protect her from his inevitable lies. She was no longer the overlooked virtuoso of domesticity. She was a woman reclaiming her power, one piece of evidence at a time. The meek, invisible wife was gone, and in her place stood a strategist, preparing for the final, unavoidable confrontation. The night Clara chose was a Thursday. It was ordinary, unremarkable, the perfect canvas for the extraordinary event she had planned. She spent the afternoon preparing the scene, not like a woman scorned, but like a CEO preparing for a hostile takeover. There was no rage in her movements, only a chilling, methodical precision. She cleaned the house until it gleamed, erasing any trace of her investigation, any sign of the turmoil within her. She set the dining room table for two, with their best china and silverware, as if for a special occasion. In the center of the table, where a floral centerpiece might normally sit, she placed Mark's silver laptop. She opened it, navigated to the Julian folder, and left the screen illuminated with a grid of photographs, Mark and Julian laughing on the beach, clinking champagne glasses, sharing a life she was never meant to see. She cooked his favorite meal, a roast chicken with rosemary potatoes. The aroma filled the house with a sense of normalcy that was deeply, terrifyingly false. It was the ultimate act of dramatic irony, a final performance of the role he had cast her in. When she was done, she went upstairs and changed. She didn't put on something glamorous or provocative. She chose a simple, elegant black dress. It was the dress of a woman in control, a woman attending the funeral of her own marriage. She sat down at the table, her back straight, and waited. The minutes ticked by, each one a hammer blow counting down to the inevitable. When she finally heard his car in the driveway, her heart didn't leap. It settled. A profound calm washed over her. The storm was here. She heard his key in the lock, the familiar thud of his briefcase. "Clara," he called out, his voice echoing in the unnaturally quiet house. "Something smells amazing." He walked into the dining room and stopped dead. His eyes went from the formal table setting to her in the black dress and then, finally, to the glowing screen of the laptop. The blood drained from his face. The easy, confident smile he wore like a mask dissolved, replaced by a slack-jawed horror. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. And in a way, he had. He was seeing the ghost of the woman he thought he knew, the wife he thought was blind. "Clara." "What is this?" he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. She didn't look at him. She looked straight ahead, her gaze fixed on the wall behind him. She picked up her fork and knife, her movements slow and deliberate. "I was ordering groceries, Mark," she said, her voice even and devoid of emotion. "But I found something else. Sit down. We need to talk about your wedding plans." Mark stood frozen for a moment, his mind scrambling to catch up with the impossible reality in front of him. The carefully constructed walls of his two worlds had not just been breached, they had been annihilated. He looked from Clara's unervingly calm face to the smiling photos of him and Julian on the laptop screen. The evidence was absolute, irrefutable. His first instinct, the instinct of a man accustomed to being in control, was to lie. To deny. "Clara, it's not what it looks like," he began, his voice shaking. It's a joke. A prank for a friend at work." The excuse was so pathetic, so transparently false, that it hung in the air between them like a foul odor. Clara didn't even grace it with a response. She simply tilted her head slightly, her eyes finally meeting his. There was no fire in them, no hysteria. There was only a vast, glacial calm that terrified him more than any screaming match could have. She knew. She knew everything. His denial crumbled. The antagonist, the cynical gatekeeper of the truth, was stripped bare. His next tactic was anger, the last refuge of the guilty. "What were you doing going through my laptop?" he snapped, his voice rising in pitch. "That is my private property. You have no right." Clara placed her fork and knife down gently, the soft clink against the china echoing in the tense silence. "Your private property," she repeated, her voice low and dangerous. "You mean the laptop bought with money from our joint account? In the house that we own together? You want to talk about rights, Mark? Let's talk about them," and she did. With the calm precision of a prosecutor, she laid out the facts. She spoke of the secret bank account, of the diverted salary, of the storage unit filled with the artifacts of his other life. She named the wedding venue, the caterer, the jeweler. She recited dates of trips he had told her were for business. Each fact was a nail being hammered into the coffin of his deception. He sank into the chair opposite her, the anger draining out of him, replaced by a pathetic desperation. "Clara, please," he begged, tears welling in his eyes. "I didn't mean for you to find out. I didn't want to hurt you. I love you." The words, which might have once held weight, were meaningless now. "You don't love me," she stated, not as an accusation, but as a simple, undeniable fact. "You love the convenience of me. You love the stability I provided, so you could build your real life somewhere else. The person you underestimated wasn't your wife, Mark. It was your business partner. And you have breached our contract." He stared at her, finally understanding. The woman he had seen as a fragile, invisible caretaker was gone. In her place was a formidable stranger who saw him not with a broken heart, but with the cold, hard clarity of a balance sheet. His world had not just been discovered, it had been audited, and his accounts were empty. Months have passed. The beautiful house with the oak door now belongs to someone else. The silver laptop is gone. The life that was a carefully curated stage has been dismantled, the props sold off, the actors sent home. Clara sits in a new apartment, one that is smaller, but infinitely more full. It is filled with her things, her colors, her choices. The air hums not with unspoken tension, but with the quiet, steady rhythm of her own life. She is not just surviving, she is rediscovering. She enrolled in a landscape architecture course, reviving a passion she had packed away in one of those boxes in the attic labeled "Someday." She spends her weekends with dirt under her fingernails, designing gardens for friends, creating beauty and order from the raw earth. It is a fitting metaphor. Her phone buzzes on the small table beside her. It's a text from an unknown number. She knows, instinctively, that it's from Mark. A final, desperate plea for forgiveness, for understanding, for a past that no longer exists. She looks at the notification for a long moment, a flicker of the old pain surfacing, a phantom limb aching for what it lost. But then she remembers the words of Dr. Evans. "This is the beginning of your next chapter." She presses her thumb to the screen, not to open the message, but to delete it. She erases it without reading a single word. His story no longer has a place in hers. She stands and walks to her window, which looks out over a small city park. She sees people walking, laughing, living their own complex stories. She is one of them now, not an invisible supporting character, but the protagonist of her own narrative. The journey was brutal, the discovery a wound that will likely always bear a scar. But from that wound, a strength she never knew she possessed has grown. She learned that the most profound power doesn't come from being seen by others, but from finally, truly, seeing yourself. So I ask you again, have you ever felt invisible? Remember Clara. Remember that underestimation is a weapon that often backfires on the one who wields it. True strength isn't loud. It's the quiet resolve to open a folder, to ask a hard question, to close a door, and to plant a new garden in the space you have cleared for yourself. If this story touched you, share it with someone who might need to be reminded of their own quiet power. Remind them that even when they feel unseen, their story is still being written, and they hold the pen.